Kyle Sonlin, thanks so much for joining us again on Wall Street Unplugged.
Frank, it's so great to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, what a difference compared to the last time you were on, right? Wall Street Unplugged, because you're one of the most connected people in the security token industry. That's what drew me to you. I want to get to know you and your partner, Herwig Konings, personally. So, drove down to Palm Beach. We had a couple of drinks. We had a really good time. And we were so positive on this market. And this was a little while ago. I would say maybe 2 years ago, close to that. But then 12 months passed, and I think we didn't really see the adoption taking place, at least at the pace I thought. Since security tokens, just to bring everyone in here, just an amazing way of small companies to raise cash. We're doing it ourselves with our CEO token. You can have a publicly traded security at 1/10 the cost for investors, and they could trade that token 12 months later. But, it was slow to adopt. Then we had COVID. But now this industry is really starting to take off, both in the U.S. and globally. What's changed, and what are you seeing on your end for someone that's very connected in this industry?
So what's really changed is I personally feel that the financial adoption of new vehicles and all this innovation just does take a little bit of time. And really what we were looking for in the security token industry was that flagship client, that hallmark opportunity that could really thrust the industry forward and prove to the world that this was a viable option to raise capital, as well as proving all of the infrastructure that we've been developing over the past 3 to 4 years. So with security tokens, you're upgrading a lot of the settlement and clearing processes that a traditional security or stock would have. And so you kind of need to stress test that a little bit. And we hadn't quite had the opportunity to actually test that out in a live market with real, high demand. And what we saw just recently is Overstock. Overstock, which owns T0, the exchange. They're a publicly traded company on NASDAQ, and they actually issued a security token dividend to all of their public shareholders. This was back in May. May 19th was the dividend date. And so they paid out a security token of Overstock shares, the same exact classification as the public shares, except these were on the security token blockchain. And so they were traded on T0 as opposed to being traded on NASDAQ. And so this is the first time we've ever seen something like this happen, which is a fantastic opportunity. But what's really brought it forward is just the institutional interest in this token. We've seen a crazy increase in trading volume, a crazy increase in a lot of the market cap and the prices of these assets since that opportunity. And so that's, I really think, the big tide that's turned so far, Frank, that we've seen over the first half of 2020.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, even during COVID, we saw all these stocks come down. We saw Overstock. I think the price of that stock fell below 3. It's trading close to 100, right? And it was funny because, they were looking to sell Overstock to fund T0 because of the growth that they saw in that business. And no one really wanted to buy it pre-COVID. Now it's driving the company to the point where, it's also filtering down to the T0 platform. But you're seeing, 2 tokens that trade now on their exchange. But talk about the logistics behind this, because now just recently, I think maybe a month ago, they opened these tokens up. I don't know if it's both of them, the T0 or Overstock. There's 2 tokens on the exchange right now, but have they opened them up to retail traders, right? So anyone could go there, open an account, and trade these things now, right? I mean, that's a game changer.
Yeah, totally. So the retail investor access is definitely something that would be considered the holy grail of security tokens, because the technology itself isn't doing anything that crazy or out of the box, aside from just upgrading a lot of the processes we have. But the problem always was that with a security token in our traditional methods, only accredited investors would be able to invest in that. But T0 has really led the way in terms of defining the operations that allow them to trade that as a retail offering. With Overstock, their security token, it was much easier because it was the same exact share classification as their public offerings. So as long as they're a publicly filed company, this is representation of the equity of that company, they were able to kind of just offer that to retail as well, since they were already publicly reporting for that company. T0 is also an interesting case for their token because they leveraged what's called Rule 144, which is an exemption that also allows them to trade retail investors. And I think that's going to be what you're going to see many of these private companies leveraging in order to be able to get retail investor access. And so T0, again, pioneered the way in terms of making that mainstream and allowing another option for issuers to be able to get that retail investor access without having to file as a public company or do an IPO.
No, it's really interesting. That's great stuff to see T0 really take the lead here, because And my next question was just talk about regulation in the industry. I mean, do you see it easing further where the SEC has to act a little bit quicker when it comes to providing licenses for trading or alternative trading systems? Because you're seeing this industry, right? People looking at T0 going, wow, look at the volume, look at the liquidity. And that's what every retail or every institutional investor that I spoke to about this before I launched our CEO token, Curzio token, they all asked me about liquidity. And I said, I'm going to do everything I can to provide liquidity, because when liquidity comes to the market, like we're seeing with the stock market, look what happens. Valuations take off. There's, you could filter in literally hundreds of billions of dollars into Microsoft and Apple today, and you wouldn't even know because their market caps are 1.7 trillion plus whatever. But now you're seeing this, and it's also been booming, right? Which we've seen in many areas of the world. But do you see on the regulation front, because I know you're tied to that, you speak to a lot of lawyers within this industry, where they're going to start saying, hey, you know what, let's start focusing on this. Let's push it through, because it is good for the investors. It's save costs for companies. To me, when I looked at this and created our token, it just made sense on every single level. But yet I just feel like the SEC still drags its feet with some companies.
Absolutely. I think that the regulation is definitely easing. The regulation moves slowly. And unfortunately, we just have to accept the fact that regulation can take years for things to change. And that's intentional. I mean, we look at most of the regulations we use to trade stocks and any kind of security were determined in the 1930s during the Securities Act. So most of the framework that we use today is still based off of the laws and rules that were written 70, 80, 90 years ago. And so we just have to use that frame of reference when looking at security tokens and see the fact that at least in 2020, as you correctly pointed out, we've seen a significant, I think, lesser scrutiny from the SEC and regulators on not only these offerings, but the infrastructure itself. When you're looking at the offerings, they have clearly defined the fundraising exemptions. And so they are looking to expand those a little bit. They've taken comments from my firm as well as from many others in the industry in terms of how they can change those or make those more accepting for issuers in the US. But then they've also actually approved security token offerings before. They approved the ARCA funds tokenized offering. And so ARCA is actually, they raised a fund that buys US treasuries and then allows people to then buy those US treasuries as a tokenized offering. And so they've approved security token offerings before, as well as they have approved more ATSs and broker dealers in the digital space than we've seen in years past. So you've got companies like North Capital as well as Rialto Markets that were both given ATS licenses, which allows them to do that trading for security tokens. And so both were given that license, and both do have an interest and a focus on digital securities, security tokens. And so they've used some of that terminology. They've made it more understanding of that's the direction they're heading. And then from broker dealers, we see the same thing with Watchdog Capital and many others that have just been approved that are all focused on the digital world and transforming our traditional securities markets. And it seems like the SEC is interested in working with those firms to help the US stay at the cutting edge of the financial markets, to stay innovative. But I think that their main focus is making sure that it can be in a regulated environment, that they know how to enforce it, and that it can scale properly without exposing investors to fraud.
Now, we're seeing a move here in Bitcoin, Ethereum, many crypto surging right now. Do you think this is also going to fuel the security token market? Remember, guys, security tokens are not utility tokens. Utility tokens, they don't offer you an equity stake. The value is derived from basically the services that you could use for the token, which I've researched so many, about 80% of the industry they have no services or use for the token. With security tokens like ours, even the CEO token, you get equity stake in our business. Fast-growing publisher media company, early stages, and we're also paying a quarterly dividend, but it's backed by assets. Two totally different things. But to me, I feel like I'm getting a lot more calls now that we're seeing, Bitcoin push to 12,000 and Ethereum go higher, and a lot has to do with the Fed spending. I don't want to get too technical here, but do you think that's also fueling this market, or is it just totally different?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of ways to look at it. The first one is that as Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of these cryptos rise, you get a lot of these investors that are invested in cryptos that are naturally a little bit more risk tolerant than what you'd see from the traditional markets. And so as these investors make money and have returns, they're going to be looking for new opportunities to realize these same returns. And when you look at even a company like Overstock, the Overstock digital dividend was trading at $7.50 just 10 weeks ago. And in that 10-week span, it's up 11 times. It's up to over $75 a share. So the returns on these things are just as effective as these cryptos, except you actually have legal ownership. We see the stock market going crazy. We see a lot of these things. And I think that on top of all of that, it's also confirmed by a lot of the high profile security token offerings that have completed their fundraise. The Republic Note is a great example. Republic is a crowdfunding platform that helps companies raise capital, and they take a little piece of equity from each business that raises money on their platform. And so Republic just launched their Republic Note, which is a security token offering representing all 200 plus companies that they have equity in. And as those companies get liquidity, that cash flow is then disseminated back to investors. And they raised a full $11 million, which was 3 million oversubscribed. They were aiming for 8. They raised 11 based off of so much interest in just 1 month. Totally sold that one out. You get this video game company called Infinite Fleet, led by a profound Bitcoin developer and community member, who they just completed their full raise for launching their video game, which is going to use crypto inside of the game to manage a lot of the transactions and things that you own in there. And so we're seeing a lot of successful offerings being raised from these smaller businesses that don't necessarily have the opportunity to raise this capital. And then from the investor side, moving forward, why would not an investor want in a security token offering instead of paper shares? Because now with a security token offering, there is a clear path to liquidity, there's a clear path to the exchange, and if you're an investor, there's no downside to you being able to sell that offering if you'd like, or creating any of these awesome staking methods that we're seeing in DeFi that could also translate into the security token space.
And also, even for the issuers, right, the companies, I mean, the cost is so much less than going through traditional banking and investment banking, which could be easy 10x or more expensive. So, and now you're seeing more come to the market. You mentioned some good ones, but are you seeing, and this is one of the things that I feared, because I did see some of this early on. I'm not too sure if you're seeing, because you're really engulfed in this industry. We can get to your company, Security Token Group, in a second. Are you seeing some companies trying to take advantage of this, where you don't have to report the same financials, the same structure, the regulatory compliance is less than what you would see, reporting quarterly results, but you have some that I've seen, that I spoke to personally, are trying to take advantage of the system and say, okay, well, maybe we'll offer a dividend, and they launch the security tokens, and when you look under the hood, they really are crappy, shitty offerings. Are you seeing that a little bit? Because that's the only thing that scares me, where this is really a good vehicle. It's there for the taking. You're going to see it's starting to get, huge publicity, especially through T0 in America. It's growing globally. But what really killed crypto, too, was just so many people, so many bad players right in there. I just don't want to see this with this industry. I'm curious if you're seeing that. Are you turning away business, or are you seeing more legit companies say, hey, this is the route we want to go?
It's a great question. I think it's a multifaceted one. I mean, the first thing that I want to get into is that dealing with scams or maybe less than legit offerings is probably maybe where I'd put it. Higher risk, maybe junk bond style equity investments. That's nothing new for capital markets, and that's not something that we should turn away. I mean, the reality is, as long as there's no fraud and there's as long as they're not actually committing an illegal act, shady offerings, or ones that aren't the highest quality, are going to come anywhere that they can raise capital. Well, you look at the stock market today, and I could name you so many stocks that I do not feel are successful investments. I do not feel very confident in, and yet the public is still able to invest and access those. So the reality is that that's not going away, and that is something that you have to deal with. And so that's why we focus on with security token market in terms of providing as much data and as much research as we can to be able to allow investors to do their proper diligence on these deals. But that's the beauty of a security token. If you want to potentially offer a dividend, that's okay. You don't need to offer it in a structured way. You look back at the Republic Note, they're going to be offering irregular dividends. Whenever one of their companies goes IPO or gets acquired, they will just automatically distribute that out to their investors. So you could get 3 dividend payments 1 week, and you could get none for a month. And that's just how it works based off those companies. So those are regular dividend schedules or whatever, or something that can be considered a feature or not based off of that specific company. So as you're investing, as you're looking at these offerings, I think the key is going to be finding companies that pay a lot of attention towards investor relations. They pay a lot of attention towards disclosures. They don't necessarily have to, but those are value adds that provide a lot more security in your investment as an investor, right? So if the company is much more communicative, you know who the founding team is, you know that they're dedicated to the cause, they're constantly putting out, their marketing materials, they're constantly giving updates on the firm, you're going to feel a lot more confident about investing in that company versus just some random business that you see, maybe has an interesting, profile, but that's about it, right? So make sure you're doing your diligence and trying to be that way. But do avoid the fact that there will be companies that are maybe less than legit, I think, for sure. But that doesn't mean that it's all of them, and it's certainly not a majority at all. Many of these businesses are legitimate companies looking to raise capital through equity as well as through debt and many other opportunities with real estate, hard assets, and many other exciting special financing vehicles that it just comes down to doing your research. Don't get caught in the hype or the surface level material. If you find a company you like and you're interested, then I think that they'll probably be okay.
No, it definitely makes sense because I know you analyze a lot of these, right? On your STO market site. Talk about your whole company, Security Token Group, to the point where you said, wow, this industry is amazing, has incredible growth, and you decide to actually launch this company with Herwig, which, I'm interviewing you. Herwig is just a brilliant guy that we've worked with as well, that I've worked with as your partner. How did this idea come to fruition? How long ago did you launch this? And now you have a bunch of divisions and seeing, traffic through the roof because the industry is taking off. But how did it all start?
It's a great question. My background is actually in wealth management in equities. So I come from a more traditional background of investing in public stocks and wealth management. So my whole background was about investment opportunities. And so as I continued to expand, my niche began forming around tech as stocks and a lot of these early tech IPOs. And so I smoothly transitioned into the crypto space as I try to take that a step further, right? And so how could we, take these traditional assets but leverage the global economy and be able to make these things cheaper, more effective? But again, I'm interested in globalizing capital markets. There's countries all around the world that don't have access to US investments, and there's US investors that don't have access to global investments. So being able to form something where everybody can participate was a main focus of mine, and something that I think will absolutely enhance capital markets as more capital enters the system. So we launched Security Token Group in 2017, starting off primarily as a consulting firm. That was our first business that we launched. And the goal there was to help issuers and business owners understand this industry, figure out, okay, how do you properly raise capital by leveraging these regulatory exemptions, as well as how does the technology work, who should they be working with, what partners, and how does this process work? It's also evolved into working with the tech providers as well and those companies in the space and helping them integrate with each other, right? If you have a broker dealer in the United States that's working with an issuer that's in Europe who wants to list on an exchange in Africa, they might not have the pieces to combine with each other quite as effectively. That's where we kind of come in to be that glue in between each of those different businesses to make sure everything runs smoothly. And so that's where the business started. It was really effective for us to learn about the industry and really meet every player in the space. And that's still our most successful business today with Security Token Advisors. So we branched that out as its own business underneath Security Token Group. And as you said, that's what Herwig runs, and he's an expert. He's the smartest person I know. So he runs that business, and I help out a lot there as well. And then we have Security Token Market, which is the marketing platform. This really came about as we were working as consultants with these offerings. A lot of our family office relationships, our venture capital network, was interested in doing their diligence on some of these deals, but they had no place to do that. There was nowhere that they could go to find all the security token offerings and be able to find all the information that they need. And so we launched Security Token Market primarily as a data resource, and it's really transitioned into a full Bloomberg style portal now. We have the homepage of stomarket.com, which is where you can find all of the data on live trading security token offerings. So we have over 20 to date. I think we're adding 5 to 7 more in the next week or two. And so that tracks all the pricing data that gives you the full historical charts, open, close, volumes, market caps for dating back 18 months for some of these securities. And so you can see the live updating trading as well as which tokens are live and where they're trading in terms of the exchange. And so then on top of that, we also have a primary database where you can research any security token offering that is past, present, or future, that's on our platform, over 300 to date. And then finally, we have a lot of market reports as well as media content. And so that's where we kind of made that pivot. We have the Bloomberg terminal with all the data connecting with every exchange around the world. And we also have the media content. So we post market reports that do diligence on these offerings, give detailed backgrounds into what is going on in the secondary markets, as well as featuring guest content, interviews, and many things from many of the other industry players in the space. So we've built a really strong media brand as well. And then finally, we have the podcast that we also do weekly, where we cover all of the institutional news in the space. We cover the market trading, and then we do a main topic segment where we really dive deep into the mechanics of a security token for investors so that they can better understand what they're actually hearing about and what they see online.
And guys, if you do get a chance to go to STO Market, I describe, and hopefully I'm doing this the right way, but it reminds me like a coinmarketcap.com, where that's like the one source I think, most crypto investors, and, of course, experienced ones are going to have much better sites, but just to get a quick glimpse of what's trading. But you have all the tokens trading: Overstock, T0, Blockchain Capital, you list TokenSoft, Spice VC, you have the market cap, the pricing,
all the real estate, everything you could want. So.
And you can see this building. You have the total market cap there as well. So, I mean, this is a cool site. Again, it's for free. You can go on it. You can just look at everything on there. But you get a good indication of what's going on, what tokens are being launched. And also what you do is if you can, I follow you on Twitter, and you report a lot. I think at least every week that now you do a great job with your Security Token Show, the podcast, but you report on Twitter just the statistics of how the market cap of the industry and what's going on. A lot of times I forward that stuff just to my followers. But
cool.
Why don't you also talk about where they can find information in your handle for Twitter?
Absolutely. You can follow me specifically at Kyle Sonlin, KYLESONLIN, but follow STO Market. That's really where you're going to find all the info. STO Market on Twitter. And so we post, as Frank said, we post a lot of content as well as a lot of short form stuff. You can also add us on LinkedIn, reach out via LinkedIn as well if that's more your style. So reach out anywhere, and you're going to see the developments in the security token space. Don't be left behind.
Now let's get to a few final questions here. What trends in the industry? You talked about a lot, real estate and debt offerings and stuff, but what has you most excited that you've seen? I mean, I see the Aspen token that's going to be traded. So I like the fact that you're going to see other tokens outside of the T0 tokens, the Overstock token trading on that platform, which is kind of like opening up that door for a lot of tokens to trade on this. So, what are some of the trends that has you excited right now, other than, yes, we're seeing liquidity in the market, but is it like a special type of token that people are creating? Is it more real estate? Because we know that people who have a liquid assets focus on this market, because it gives you an opportunity. What this is, guys, is tokenization, selling off a piece of your asset to investors. So you could own commercial real estate for the first time. You could own, collectibles for the first time, or a piece of it, a share of it, and they trade like a stock, just like a stock does. But what are some of the maybe trends or things that you're seeing that has you really excited, of things that you haven't mentioned yet?
Absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of what we see on the live market, I'm excited about the idea of businesses being able to raise capital more effectively. So with equities, these businesses that didn't traditionally have capital sources or availability to raise that money are now able to get capital for their businesses, whether that's through a line of credit and a debt offering, which are popping up. We see platforms that are trying to create collateralized lending for equities and things like that, or just doing a straight equity fundraise, but allowing for a more easy process that's cheaper and more effective. And then again, from an investor perspective, any investor would love to have more liquid markets to be able to trade on the secondary markets. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Real estate as well is also incredibly exciting. This is one of the most illiquid assets in the world. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars just in the US alone. And we've seen live security tokens that are thriving in the real estate market. The way that it works is that you have a property that you're renting out, a second property or whatever. You can actually put that in a business and then sell off 30% of it. And so investors can get access into a dividend paying real estate property. You can recapitalize on the funds that you initially put up for or pay off whatever you need to do, and everybody's happy. These real estate properties are, in the market cap of somewhere from, 5 to 600,000 all the way down to under 100,000 in terms of the property value. And they sell 20, 30% or more of the offering And then the investor gets double-digit dividends that are paid daily into their bank account. So the minute that you invest, the next day, you're already getting rental income that's paid directly back to you in the double-digit returns. And then you also own that fraction of the house, so you'll see your equity appreciation in the home increase as well. So we just saw 9943 Marlowe Street, which was issued by Realty. That was the first piece of real estate, or the first rental home that actually got tokenized and was listed on secondary markets. It's now been live for 12 months, so we can go back and calculate the full return. And what we see on this 9943 Marlowe Street, over 12 months of trading, it returned investors 20.29% in both dividends and equity appreciation across the first 12 months. So in terms of being an invest in a real estate property that's got a much more stable value than what you see in an equity in a tech company or something like that, that can still return you over 20% from the market is just absolutely fantastic and very, very exciting as these things continue to expand.
No, it's definitely true. And let me ask you this too. We'll end on this question. What can we expect from this industry over the next 12 months? And also, tough question, but where do you see it 3 to 5 years from now? Because right now, what I've seen since May is an explosion. And I thought it would take place a lot sooner. We did have COVID, but now, like you said, the funding's happening, liquidity's happening, the regulation's getting better. You've seen T0 have, you could actually go on T0, open up an account, they'll do a KYC check on you, and then, you could trade these tokens, right? I mean, this is what I envision it, you envision it, and now it's here, and now you're seeing, like you said, the infrastructure, that foundation has to be laid. And once it is, now you're going to see people pile on, kind of like the early stages of the internet. But what are some of the things that you could expect from this industry, or you expect to happen in this industry over the next 12 months, and also go a little further out to 3 to 5 years?
These are fun questions. Let's start with 12 months, as you said. In 12 months, I think it's very clear that we're going to have international assets. So if you go on stomarket.com right now, you can see that most of these offerings are US based. We have a few that are international, including a couple international equities, but 18 out of 20 so far are all US based companies or real estate or properties that are being tokenized. And so we know that there are billions of dollars of tokenized assets in Europe, but they're still dealing with some of the secondary market regulations as well to be able to list these things live to investors around the world. So I think in 12 months, you're going to not only see international assets, but you're going to see billions and billions of dollars of real estate, of equities, of funds, of debt products from all around the world. I think the US will continue to be the leader in this capital market, because it's a much more robust financial system and there's a clearer path for an issuer to be able to raise significant amounts of money. But I think that internationally, you're going to really see an uptick in secondary traded assets. And for the first time, US investors will have full ease of access into investing anywhere around the world in companies, businesses, real estate, anything around the world. And I think that's absolutely game changing. So in 12 months, I really think that there's going to be this international focus where everywhere around the world is going to be able to invest, whether it's international investors buying into US based equities, debt, real estate, and things like that, or again, the other way around. So it's kind of making that global interoperable financial system that I really think is exciting, not only just because it lowers the standard of who can invest and it allows for more participation, but think about it as an equity holder. The supply doesn't change, and now you're just adding much more capital into the system, which then results in a capital appreciation for all of the assets that you own, because now there's a much more demand from the external world. So I think that for investors, everybody's going to be very happy about international access. And then again, those international investors will be very happy to be able to finally participate in the US markets. So for 12 months, I think that's my prediction. If we're going to go further than that, it does make it more difficult for me to be specific in terms of exactly what I see, but I can certainly tell you that I definitely predict that in 3 to 5 years, we will see NASDAQ acquire a security token exchange and begin to trade security tokens. I think that there's without a doubt, they cannot leave all this opportunity on the table. We saw them do the same thing in the tech bubble in the 2000s. I think the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ acquired 12 different exchanges in that time period that were trading tech stocks that NASDAQ and NYSE were not properly equipped for. And so I think you're going to see the same exact thing here, where there's going to be a consolidation of exchanges, certainly here in the US, but I could see the ICE International Exchange Group actually making some international plays there as well. So I think that you're going to see a consolidation of exchanges and some of the traditional secondary markets are totally going to enter into this space. And then again, if they enter the space, you're going to see some of these investment banks offering these services as well. So I think 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a much bigger shift from the traditional financial market to embrace security tokens, because they're going to blink and in 12 months, there's going to be billions and billions of dollars listed on these exchanges, and they don't want to miss out on that.
Yeah, and just for the early stages, what I'm hearing on my end too, like you said, the NASDAQ, remember those requirements are still pretty high, right? And a lot of these security tokens, outside of maybe the overstock token, I don't even know if the T0 would, based on the qualifications, would trade on NASDAQ.
It would
but
not.
I know that the over-the-counter market is really digging into this, looking to trade token. I know this personally, so that they're looking to trade security tokens through that avenue, right? Because these are going to be early-stage companies, right? So I'm hearing it that already from really good sources. So that hopefully doesn't take as long as 5 years. But I think you're right. I think you will. If this trend continues, you're going to see consolidation. You're going to see the big guys really get into it. But again, it takes a while. Now we finally have the liquidity part. We're seeing these tokens launch. We're seeing more money coming to the market. I mean, the foundation's built. So it's really fun times right now. So hopefully these things keep rolling. And look, I want to say, listen, answered all my questions. We dug in deep. I love having you on. You're one of the early adopters to this industry. You've helped our company tremendously. Again, we were looking for people that we could trust that could help us out. And I think we all have that system now. We all have our players that we trust. And now just to see where the industry is now, it's really, really cool. So I know you're busy now. Things are really great for your company. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on, Kyle.
Thanks so much for having me. If anybody wants to follow up, ask me any additional questions or reach out regarding an inquiry for your own business, feel free to reach out. I think that the best way to do that would probably be through Twitter or LinkedIn. But you can also email me at kyle@stomarket.com, and I'm happy to answer anything you have.
All right. Sounds great, bud. And we'll definitely talk soon.
Talk soon.